Thank you very much, my beloved friend Bill Moore, and the distinguished guests at this table and others in the audience who I will not take time to name because, first of all, I've missed someone, and secondly, our time is going pretty fast. I had a thing I was going to read about what's going on in Yugoslavia, where we have been and held meetings and where the torture and the killing, we haven't seen anything like it, I suppose, since the Second World War and the work of the Nazis in World War II. And we're sort of unaware of it. We see it, but we don't see it. The torture, the mutilation, the killing in the heart of Europe, in the very place that the First World War began, when the Archduke was killed and started the First World War. And we see that sort of thing now all over the world. I've just come from North Korea. North Korea is, Mr. Nixon said, is the most dangerous frontier in the world. We have no relations with North Korea. We don't do business with North Korea. They're totally isolated from the rest of the world. They don't know what's going on in the rest of the world. They've never heard of Jesus Christ. They've never heard of God as we know him. And why I was invited, I don't know. I was invited by the government to come and speak at two new churches they've just built, one Catholic and one Protestant, and to address the students at Kim Il-sung University, the only university in North Korea. They have 100 colleges that specialize in different things, but only one university. And we went there and spent almost a week. A beautiful city that they've built called Pyongyang. And I met with the president, who is called the great leader. His son is called the dear leader. And I had an hour alone with him, and then he gave a little lunch for our team. We stayed in their luxurious guest house. I had a chauffeur-driven Mercedes to take me wherever they wanted me to go. And I spoke from one end of the city to the other to various groups. And I felt something of the isolation of that country. And I felt something of the horror that could break out because they have atomic weapons. The South, just a few miles away, has atomic weapons. And what would happen if in a third world situation that would break out and atomic bombs began to fall all over the world? How long would we last? We live on the very edge of catastrophe, on the very edge of World War III. And we're sitting here in this lovely room, and we hear about Philadelphia and the problems here, and the same problems are in New York, and they're in Los Angeles, and they're in Seattle, and they're in Atlanta. Andrew Young came here Sunday to see me. He came to my room in the hotel. Former mayor of Atlanta, ambassador to the United Nations, and head of the Olympic program in 1996 that's going to be in Atlanta. And Andy and I have been friends for years. And he sat there with tears in his eyes as he told me his evaluation of what's taking place in America and in the world today. And a lot of that alarm has come as a result of what we saw in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. And we're beginning to realize that our cities are in need. They're in need of economic help, but they're more in need of spiritual help, because the great problem is moral and spiritual. And I would like to say a few words today about leadership, because you are leaders. But I'm an optimist. I look on this whole thing not with pessimism, but with optimism, for two reasons. First, as a Christian, I know this life is not all that there is. when this life is over, I'm going to go to a future paradise where God rules. I know injustice will someday be judged and evil will be banished. But I'm also an optimist for a second reason. I'm an optimist because I believe it is still possible for us to grapple and solve the problems in the Delaware River Valley and begin to solve them. And as long as there are men and women who have the dedication and vision to provide spiritual and moral leadership for our generation, you can lead the way. Philadelphia is a city that has such a history and has been a leader. It was from this city that so many of the great events that made America great came. And you heard one of them, as was read from Billy Penn. I've never heard him called Billy Penn before. I'll take a new look at my name, Billy. And a new respect when I look in the mirror that I have that name. What kind of people is it going to take to solve these problems? Whether they be in the home, the community, the nation, or in the world. What are the characteristic qualities of a true leader? All of you here today are leaders or can become leaders. Martin Luther King got a great deal of his education in this city, and he found out that a minority can change a nation. And he took a minority and changed the nation and helped lead it. And a man or a woman plus God becomes a majority. And the first quality that I'd like to mention is integrity. Integrity means that a man is the same on the inside as he claims to be on the outside. There's no discrepancy between what he says and what he does. A person of integrity can be trusted, and he's the same person alone in his hotel room 1,000 miles from home as he is in his church or community or in his own home. Solomon wrote long ago, "The man of integrity walks securely, but he who takes crooked paths will be found out." One of the greatest gifts that God gives a man is the ability to lie down at night, satisfied with who he is and what he's done that day because he has acted with integrity. The second quality, I believe, that is necessary for leadership during these difficult days is personal security. I do not mean this in the sense of physical security or job security. Newsweek magazine ran an article the other day entitled "Uneasy Men at the Top." They described the job insecurities of some of the top levels of corporate management in large companies. It set the stage for one newly installed chief executive officer to say in jest, "I didn't mind it when they wrote my name on the office door in chalk. But I did think it was a little unethical to have a wet sponge hanging from the doorknob." But I'm instead talking about personal emotional security, the kind which comes from knowing and accepting who you are, why we're here, and where we're going. I do not believe that that kind of security comes from our careers alone. Dr. Glenn Swager, who is a psychiatrist at the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, Kansas, wrote, "The trouble with total devotion to a career is that businessmen are not set up to provide emotional satisfaction. If the organization changes or if your job changes, the emotional satisfaction you get from your work may decrease sharply, and you're left with no other source of support. And then when retirement comes, you have nothing else to turn to." His recommendation for avoiding that type of vulnerability is to diversify your emotional portfolio. And he said a proper emphasis would be to put more time on your moral and spiritual life. Come to know Christ. Let him be your security. And when everything falls apart and everything changes, you have total security in him. And besides integrity and personal security, the third quality which is necessary in a leader is a sense of priority. We spend so much time with trivialities. Get your priorities straight. What are the real things that count in life? Sit down and make a list of them and be sure that you're giving your time to that. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will come unto you. And then the last is the quality of vision. We need a vision. I think as I come to Philadelphia that I have found a group of men and women here in the short time I've been here that do have a vision. They have a vision for what can be done for Philadelphia to make it the great city that it once was, or greater city than it's ever been. I believe there's some people in this city that have a burden, that are willing to get on their knees and ask God to do what William Penn wanted Philadelphia to be. And I believe it can be the leading city in the country in solving our country's problems. You have a responsibility, you have the leadership, and now you need the dedication and the vision. And I believe that you have it. I heard about one man that he was the chairman of the board of this big company, and he went to the president's office. He wanted to see him. And the secretary said, "I'm sorry, sir, but he's in a conference. He can't be disturbed at this moment." "Can't be disturbed. I'm the chairman of the board." He just pushed the door open and looked, and there he saw the president on his knees in prayer. And he quietly closed the door and stepped back, and he said, "Now I know why we all come to him for advice. He's getting his instructions from a higher source, and no wonder our company is prospering." Yes, God can do that for you. He can do it in your business, in your home. He can do it in this city and in this area that takes in much more than just Philadelphia. But most of all, I challenge you to be individuals who are committed to Jesus Christ, because only in him can you know what it fully means to have integrity, personal security, priority, and vision. God bless you and thank you.